we have three great Africans. The first to speak will be Professor NYONG'O, who for the moment he's here now will remove his governor's hat and will wear his academic hat. He's not only been my mentor at the university in the Department of Political Science, but he's written a lot on politics and political economy, but he's also become a practitioner, and during the Ford days, he was the executive director of Ford and later Ford Kenya, and he was also one of the advisors of Jaramogi Odinga before he became a member of parliament and later became the senator of Kisumu and finally governor of Kisumu. Professor, I think you will start and then I will introduce Michael, or you want me to introduce all of you? Okay. The second speaker will be Professor Michael Chege. Professor Michael Chege and Professor NYONG'O are like Siamese twins. They teach political economy, and during the heydays of the 1980s, when there used to be public lectures in the University of Nairobi's Taifa Hall, Professor NYONG'O and Professor Michael Chege were regular speakers. They've also been together when Professor NYONG'O was the Minister for Economic Planning. Professor Michael Chege was his advisor. So you can talk of two gentlemen who are a loaded combination. Joining them is again one who combines very well with them. And Dr. Olara Otuno with Professor NYONG'O go way back to Makerere. He became the foreign minister and has been a diplomat of the Uganda government. He comes from the community of the wider Luo in Uganda. And Dr. Olara Otuno can give you the credentials of Jaramogi as a Pan-Africanist because he has a living memory of what Jaramogi was doing for the greater African nation. Now that I've introduced them, I won't come in and they have a modus operandi in which they'll keep on handing the relay baton. Professor NYONG'O, you are first on the floor.
Thank you very much, my friend Adam, Prof. Thank you very much, the family Jaramogi who arranged these things today, inspired it, and all those who have come. Less than 5 years into flag independence, the doyen of social democracy, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, penned his autobiography, Not Yet Uhuru. Matters have since gotten worse. The masses in Kenya can hardly breathe. Across our land and nation, disrespect for human dignity reigns. There are families surviving on 1 meal per day. Healthcare for all remains a distant dream. Many parents cannot afford school fees. Place their hopes on charity. Kenya is now rated one of the most unequal societies globally, with an annual rate of growth that provides little hope that our nation will provide a place to feel at home for all our people. Just before independence, Jaramogi told the Nyapara of colonial rule, and I quote, "Kenya is Marwa," which means Kenya is ours. Perhaps he spoke too early, for it didn't take long before Jaramogi was earning freedom from colonialism. It's also about the struggle for economic, social, and political justice for all. He was categorical that the struggle for independence, I quote, was about improving improving the lives of all Kenyans. As long as there are downtrodden people in the nation of Kenya, the struggle for liberation in Kenya, as elsewhere in Africa, remains urgent and an imperative. That struggle is still urgent and imperative even today. Vice President Jaramogi Odinga witnessed it all. The scramble for post-colonial or colonial assets, the individuals and some former nationalists trooped to the seat of power in pursuit of special interests. He saw firsthand the seeds of present-day major graft planted, displayed among the ruling class. This was not the Kenya without constant intrigues. The Jaramogi faced constant intrigues in the ruling party KANU. To isolate all progressive forces, decided to finally resign from the government to form the Kenya People's Union in 1966. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was detained without trial as unbogable, and continued the struggle for multi-party democracy, dignity and social justice up to his last breath. Exactly 30 years ago today, we fondly remember Jaramogi as steadfast, modest, honest, consistent, a diligent farmer, teacher, mentor, a Pan-Africanist, nationalist, a realist who was earnest in his advocacy for the liberation of the wretched of the earth in Kenya and elsewhere in the world. Koigi wa Mwere got it right. He said Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was one of the few politicians whose politics was driven by ideology than personal whims, and by a vision that would have been a compass by which fighters like Nyerere, Nkrumah, and Gabriel Abdel of Kenya. The respect for history was engraved on his walls, notwithstanding his differences with Jomo Kenyatta. Those of us who led the second liberation struggle have walked in the footsteps of Jaramogi, consistently working with his son Raila Odinga. Jaramogi lives on in the basic structure of our struggle. The Constitution respects and honors, and I quote, those who heroically struggle to bring freedom and justice to our land, unquote. Jaramogi's name and footprints is in it and remains in devolution, as enshrined in the 2010 Constitution, is a fruit of the second liberation. The preamble recognizes the aspirations of all Kenyans for a government based on the issues that Jaramogi and suffered for. And as I have written elsewhere, that the annals of history in the genesis and evolution of modern nations only has a few visionary leaders who shaped the destiny of such nations at critical moments in history. In the case of Kenya, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga will always stand tall among the nationalists who shaped the destiny of our nation. 30 years on, it's still a long walk to freedom, but we shall get there. Long live Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Long live his vision and inspiration. Long live his words and advice. Noti Tuhuru, aluta continua. I will now hand it over to my colleague and comrade, Professor Michael Chege, with whom I have worked very closely since the 1960s, not just in academy, but also in politics as well. Michael.